Hi everyone, it's Lindy on here from Pink Whisper Designs. Today we'll be doing part 2 of the Tim Holtz Gentleman series, and we'll be using the brand new Lost Shadow ink, some embossing glaze, and the bold text, as well as a really beautiful stencil. So let's go ahead and take a look at the die set. Again, this is the Tim Holtz Sizzix Thinlits Gentleman, and we've already used that first one there, and I will link to that video down below, that part 1 video. And today we're going to use these other two. We'll be using the umbrella and the little cane that come with this set as well. I've got some black heavyweight cardstock, and I'm going to go ahead and die cut these gentlemen and those other two little pieces about 4 times. We're going to be layering these up so that we get a nice thick embellishment. I'm just running those through my Sizzix Sidekick machine. Now I've got everything die cut. I'll use my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive to glue these together. And then what we want to do is line these up. Just take a little time to make sure you line these up, because we are stacking 4, so we want to make sure that we line them up really well as we go along. And then you see we get this beautiful chipboard style embellishment. So I did that for all the other pieces as well. I've got a sticky mat in my Misty stamp positioner, and you get 3 sticky mats in this package. And one is a 1/4 inch grid, one is 1/8, and one is 1/2 inch grid. So these are really nice. You can select the grid that works best for you. So for the stamp today, I'm removing that mat because we're going to be using the Hero Arts Bold Prints Cling Stamp. This is called Script. And you can see how thick, this is a thick rubber stamp, so we do need to remove that mat from the Misty. And then I'm going to grab a piece of Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock. I've placed it up and in a little bit on the Misty so that I have plenty of room. And then I want to line up the stamp nice and straight, so I'm lining it up with that right-hand edge of the Misty. I'm using the Versafine Onyx black ink. This is a permanent black ink. I want to make sure that my stamping is with a permanent ink because we are going to be stenciling over top of this, and I don't want it to smudge at all. I've used my Stampendable Stamp Press tool to press that out. And now we can go ahead and set those aside. I've got my Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station. I'll add a little bit of tape, double-sided tape, just so that I can hold my paper in place. But first, let's go ahead and heat set each of these panels, and then we can place that down, make sure it's nice and straight. Now I've got this beautiful Pinkfresh Studio stencil. This is called the Geo Arch, and there are 3 stencils in this set, and you can see there's an example, but there's also a hot foil plate that coordinates with this stencil. I will list and link that down below for you. We are not going to be using that today, but it is available. These stencils are labeled stencil 1, 2, and 3 in that upper left hand corner. So we're going to start with stencil number 1, and again there's a nice little label there in the corner. I like to line it up with the right hand edge of my card. This cardstock is cut a little bit larger than the panel that we will finish with, but that makes it easy just to line this up right along the right hand side. I've got the brand new Lost Shadow Distress Oxide ink from Tim Holtz, and I've got a Hero Arts blending brush, and I'm going to go ahead and start with stencil number 1, adding that ink into all of these little openings. Now stay tuned at the end of the video. I also did this same panel using the hickory smoke, just to show you the difference between this Lost Shadow and the hickory smoke. So if you stick around to the end, I'll show you the difference between those 2 panels. So I've got the Lost Shadow, I've applied that all over. And now we want to grab stencil number 2. But first, let's heat set this again. So I've got stencil number 2, and I'm going to line that up in the upper right hand corner. So this way I know everything will be lined up perfectly. I don't have to try to see through the stencil, what I've already stenciled. I just automatically line it up in the right hand corner, and I know that it will be positioned perfectly. So for this stencil, I'm going to be using the black Soot Distress Oxide ink. Now for the red card, it'll be a little bit lighter. I'm just applying one layer of the black. But for the blue card, I added a bit more. I went back over the stencil and added a bit more, so it'll be a little bit darker. So I'll show you the difference between those two as well. So I'll fill in all of this, and it's really so much easier to do your stenciling when you use the Make Art Station with the magnets, or even put some pixie spray on the back of your stencils just to hold them in place. So now you can see we have layer 2, and again we're going to just heat set between the layers. We do want to make sure this is completely dry because we are going to be doing some embossing for that last color. So I'm laying down my Pink and Main anti-static powder. I want to make sure I have plenty of it. Again, my panel is completely dry. I'm adding that anti-static powder, and now we're going to stencil the last color. So again, I'm lining that up in the upper right-hand corner. And I've got the Lumberjack Plaid, which is also one of the newer colors from the Tim Holtz collection. And this is also a Distress Oxide. And I'm going to add this beautiful red color. This is gorgeous. This combination of the gray, black, and red I just think is so pretty. And very masculine. It's just got a nice, crisp look to it. So again, if you want it to be darker, you can add one layer and then go back over it and add another layer just to darken it up. So I'm just making sure I blend that out completely. And now I'll set that stencil aside, and you can see how gorgeous this is. But let's take it to the next level by using the Lumberjack Plaid Distress Embossing Glaze. Again, it's the same. It coordinates with your Lumberjack Plaid Distress Oxide. I'm just going to place that powder all over. Now, you want to do this fairly quickly because our ink, that red Lumberjack Plaid ink, is nice and wet, so we are going to be able to emboss it. You don't want to let that dry. And I'm just using a little brush just to brush away any little excess bits of embossing powder that I might have there. And I can go ahead and heat set this, and look at how gorgeous this is. Now keep in mind, this is a glaze. So this embossing glaze will allow anything that's underneath it to show through. So that's why I stamp the text first, because I want that beautiful text to show through the embossing glaze. So I'll go ahead and heat the entire panel, and then I'll give you a closer look at it, and you'll be able to see this beautiful shine. And there again, you can see that text coming through. So it's very translucent. And now let's go ahead and do the next card. So again, we've got our stamped panel. We're starting with the same two colors. We're going to use the Lost Shadow on stencil number 1. We're going to heat set that. And then for stencil number 2, we're going back to the black soot. And if you really love the look of these distress embossing glazes, or you just want to learn a little bit more about them, I'll link down below a video that I did using the Tim Holtz Perspective butterfly dies and lots of the embossing glazes. And here's where I added a bit more of the black. I decided to go back over it and darken that up a little bit. Now we'll heat set. Now again, we want to make sure this is completely dry. And for the last color, we're going to be using the blue. So I wanted to show you a little trick that I use to clean off my stencils. If you lay down a towel underneath the stencil and then spritz it with water and pat off all of that color on top, you get no ink on the back of your stencil. I'm sure you guys have already figured this out, but for me, it was like a revelation because normally I just lay it on my glass media mat. I spritz it, and then I have all that ink underneath the stencil and all over the mat. This just worked so easily and so well. So I hope that's a little trick that you can use as well. So now I'm doing stencil number 3. Everything is heat set at this point. It's nice and dry. I'm adding my Pink and Main anti-static powder, and we'll do stencil number 3. And for this one, I'm using the Uncharted Mariner, and this is just gorgeous with the black and the gray. I just love this combination. And again, it's got a bit of a masculine feel. I'm creating a couple cards for my sons for their birthdays. They'll be coming up in May and June. So I just thought these gentlemen dies were perfect for birthday cards. So I've got the Uncharted Mariner Distress Embossing Glaze, just like we did with the Lumberjack Plaid. We're going to pour that onto the cardstock. I like to pour it right at the top and just let it slide down. And then make sure you tap away any excess. And we'll use that small brush again just to make sure that we brush away any excess powder. So just take a second and just brush away anything that kind of stuck there that you didn't want there. So now we can go ahead and heat set this. Again, we're going to get that beautiful glaze look, and that text will show through that glaze. So here you can take a closer look at that. And now we've got these two side by side, and you can see the black is a little bit darker on the left. That's where I doubled up the amount of ink I put on. Now here's where I wanted to show you. Here's the difference between the Lost Shadow and the Hickory Smoke. So you can see that the Lost Shadow is quite a bit lighter. Now either of these would work on your panels, but I did want to show you that just so you can see the difference here. These would be great to blend together, these two gray tones. Next, let's grab a sentiment for the card. These are the Tim Holtz Sizzix Thinlits Bold Text #1 dies. And you can see all these fun sentiments you get. We're going to be using 2 of these. For the outside of the card, we'll have it say Make a Wish. And for the inside of the card, it will say Happy Birthday to You. I've got a piece of Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I've centered that die on that panel, just leaving a little border around the edges. And you can see that it die cut the reverse out of the stamp. But you also have those little letters left over, so you can certainly use those on another project. So let's set that die cut. That's the Sizzix Sidekick machine. We'll just set that aside. And you can always put those little centers back into the letters if you want to. You just want to pop those out using your pick tool. And you could pop the center of the O's back in. But we're not going to be doing that today. I've got some metallic cardstock. This is the Kraft-Stock. And these are the metallic colors. And we're going to be using that beautiful red and blue. Again, I'm grabbing the Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, and I'll glue these down to these metallic papers. But you do want to be careful when you're gluing these down. You don't want to get a lot of glue on that metallic paper. It is kind of hard to get rid of. So just kind of spread that ink out with your fingers so it doesn't ooze out from behind the letters. Just makes it a lot easier. And then we can go ahead and glue these together. And I'll do the same thing for the Happy Birthday to You. So I have a red Make-A-Wish and a red Happy Birthday to You, and the same thing with the blue, so that I can do the inside and the outside of the cards. And then I decided to back this with a little bit of black because our gentlemen are black, and I thought it would be nice to bring in a little bit more of that black. So I've just cut a panel that's probably about 1/8 of an inch larger. And that'll just frame everything nicely. So let's go back to our 2 panels, and I'm going to cut these down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And again, we started with a larger piece of cardstock. That was just to make our stenciling really easy to do. And now we can just cut away any excess. Let's go ahead and create the card base. This is a 100-pound weight, kind of a medium gray color. It measures 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and I'm scoring it at 5 1/2 inches. That'll give us a standard A2 size top folding card. And I thought this pretty gray would coordinate really well with the stenciling that we've done. So let's go ahead and glue these panels to the front of the card. And I also want to mention that all the products I'm using today are listed and linked down below and also on my blog. And again, I'll also link that part number 1 of the Gentleman series. Now I've got the sentiments. Let's glue those flat on the front of the cards. I'm gluing it in the upper left-hand corner, and that'll leave plenty of room for the little gentleman. So let's go ahead and attach the sentiments to the inside of the card. And I did that for both of these. And if you haven't seen part 1, it's a mixed media card. We'll be using a 3D embossing folder, the tree rings from Tim Holtz, which is just gorgeous. We're using some metal stars, some idea-ology pieces, the flash cards. We'll use some of his stickers for the sentiment, and also the foundry wax and the distress embossing glaze that we use today. So let's glue on the gentleman. And again, these are these nice thick chipboard-like embellishments. I'm not going to do anything to these gentlemen. I'm just going to leave them black just the way they are, but you could certainly add some ink around the edges if you wanted to make them stand out a little bit more. But I thought I really liked that contrast of the black against that patterned background. Now for this one, I'm going to add that little umbrella, which I just love. I think it's so cute. I think that could be used for lots of other cards as well. And then this little guy is going to have the cane. And as I mentioned in part 1, these are quite large. They measure about 4 3/4 inches, these gentlemen. So they take up a big section of your card, and they're also fantastic for journals because you've got a lot of space to work with. You could even use all 3 of these together in a journal. That would be really nice. And I thought I would add a few little droplets from the idea-ology collection. These are really nice because you get 3 different sizes, and that little pack has black, kind of a coppery color, and a silvery color or pewter color. So you get a nice collection. That's actually from the Halloween series, but they are still available, so I'll list those below. So I added 3 little black ones on each of the cards. And let's take a closer look at the finished card and that beautiful distress embossing glaze. And I love that metallic cardstock behind our sentiments. So these were really quick and easy to create. You can see I created these 2 and it took really no time. It was very easy to do, no coloring, so it was very simple. I also want to show you quickly that mixed media card that I mentioned earlier, and that again is part 1, and it will be linked down below for you. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. Thanks so much for joining me today. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.